I just like to make funny faces at the beginning of these. Welcome to Nicole Sauce's Thought of the Walk, episode 41. It's episode 41. I've heard that maybe I did 2 episodes 34. And if I did, that's okay. We're just going to keep numbering as I know the number. Wow, check this out. This is my pond. We've had a bunch of rain come in and there's some flooding going on here, just minor. It's not really flooding, but everything's a lot more full of water than usual. When we had the 2010 Nashville flood, the road in front of me had water flowing over at about 12 inches. But this is down the hill from my house, so the chance of my house actually ever flooding is fairly low. I'm also above the water line of the nearby Army Corps Lake, so if that dam goes, unless we have a really bad like back wave or something, I'm good. Surge, I don't know what you call that. Well, today I was originally going to talk about timing, but then there was some talk over on the Telegram group. If you're not part of the Telegram group, just go there and look for Living Free in Tennessee and join our Telegram group. There's a lot of people talking lately. Amy Dingman was talking about getting a GSD group going because after hearing my Monday podcast, which was all about building instead of freaking out during these times of the world, quote unquote, falling apart. Anyway, Amy said, you know, I'd love to have a GSD crew there, you know, talk about how you got that going. And I just thought, you know, we haven't talked about the GSD crew or get stuff done or get shit done, depending on which word you prefer to use. And the idea started really at Jack Spirko's podcast because he went on a GSD tirade one year. And that was the same year I managed to make it to his spring workshop, when he did spring workshops. For the first time, I met a guy there named Sean Mills from Hack My Solar, who you've heard on my podcast if you listen to my podcast at livingfreeintennessee.com. And he and I, like, he watched me present at Jack's. He's like, wait, Living Free in Tennessee, that's you? My wife listens to that. And I got to know his wife and his kids, and one time he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to come over and visit. Came over for the weekend, and I can't remember if other Tennessee friends came that weekend or not, but we just had a great time. Hung out, had some beers by the campfire, started what has now become a tradition where we play songs on cell phones and sing to them, but now I actually have karaoke possibilities when I want to. And in general, had a great time. And guess what? That set the foundation for a trusting relationship that when I did my first LFTN workshop, which was an event at my house where I opened it up to anybody who could buy a ticket, he heard I was doing that. He was a salesman, so he was driving by my house on his way to a sales call. He goes, hey Nicole, can I stop by in like half an hour? I said, sure. It was in the morning one morning. He comes into my kitchen and says, I gave him a cup of coffee because that's what happens when you stop by. And he said, we need to make this the most badass event that people can go to, and how can I help? And I said, well, honestly, I have committed to do this thing, and I have Jack Spirko coming to speak and some other names coming to speak, because when you start an event like that, even if you are a personality, you get other personalities involved and you have a bigger reach, right? That's a smart way to do it. And I said, well, I don't even know if my place is ready. I could use help making sure this is badass, that we get the word out. And here's what happened. We had week after week after week of a core group of friends who like to hang out together. And they came over and cleaned up my property, built a composting outhouse so that I could have both composting outhouse and porta potties so people could choose. They helped build an outdoor shower. I had one, but it was kind of sketchy. We made it nicer, put in a covered area in case it rained, and in general did a bunch of projects for me. He sourced some IBC totes to put the aquaponics system in, which was one of the things we were doing at the workshop. And that's where the GSD crew became GSD-ish, because then after the workshop was over and we all had learned how to install aquaponics, another community member, Kurt, said, I want an aquaponics system. And we're like, great. What we should do is about once a month, schedule a weekend at somebody's place doing something for them, hang out, have a good time, put it together. And so we went to Kurt's and set up the aquaponics. It was on a weekend where I couldn't go. But I did what I usually do when I can't go. I sent big old coffee urn and some coffee. And I mean, at this point, there's nobody to take care of my animals if I'm not here, or Tactical or Nighthawk or Jenny aren't here. And so usually you won't get all of us at one event because one of us will stay behind on the livestock, right? So anyway, we did that. And then we put in an aquaponics at Brian's and Brett's. And when the cycle of aquaponics were done, we started doing, I think Sean got a composting outhouse that helped him get ready for an event. And we just started doing these whenever. We originally thought it'd be once a month, and now I usually have one or two before my workshop. Brian usually has one in the fall, etc. And as we got into this, you know, people started having different roles. But I think the key to this GSD crew turning into the powerhouse that they are is that we were friends first. And every time we do something, we make time to have good food, hang out, trade stories, sing karaoke if we want to, don't sing karaoke if we don't want to, and generally have a good time. And we stay in touch in between. And the ways we stay in touch are text message. We use an app on the phone called Zello, which is like a CB radio on your phone. That's just because we were already in contact with that thing. And then Telegram, we talk on MeWe, and we genuinely care about each other's well-being. And over time, other people see our GSD crew and say, hey, I want to go to one of those. And so we let them know when it's happening, and they show up, and the group gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It helps that I'm looking at the pawpaw trees to see, yep, there's still a pawpaw up there. Andy, I got your back on that, but we really need to shake that tree, and there's flooding in that creek, so we'll see. Anyway, to harvest pawpaws, I shake the tree, and the ones that fall down are ripe. It's one of my tricks. But we just attract more people, and we have even a little write-up that's standards on how to do it. And now what happens when somebody has an emergency, well, we all know each other already. We know each other's skills. We have, you know, the GSD crew core. I would say the core is the original people, but then we have a lot of people who've been coming for a long time who are probably the core now too. I don't even know. And then those people knows people, and their friends have friends. And what we found is that even if we need something, like we needed jacks capable of jacking up a double wide this weekend for somebody, even if we don't have it in the immediate group who's going to be there, we can usually ask around and find something that will work. And in the case of the jack, we found more jacks than we needed for that project, and that was great. So what has happened is when something happens, like Melissa's house got kind of blown off its foundation by flooding, she can say, you know what, I'm going to do a GSD weekend. She's been to several. We all know who she is. And people show up, and they do the work, and they have a good time, right? We had somebody drive from another state. It was a 3-hour longer drive than he probably knew it was, but from another state, brought desserts, because he always brings desserts, right? You know, it's just kind of, everybody kind of gets these things that they always do. Electric guy is electric guy. I usually try to oversee food if it's at somebody's house, even if they're a food person. When you have a GSD, 100 people ask you 1,000 questions. So that's how the groups come to be. I think the elements in place that are important is trust and relationship development in person. I'm going to actually do it a separate thing. Number 2, in-person get-togethers, and some of them not being GSD, right? I like to joke, we were getting in together in person before this happened, and then after it happened, we just got bored and we needed to do something, so we started GSDing. That's kind of how that went down, because a lot of us are the doers to begin with. When we have somebody who is drain on the system and negative and not willing to be part of the community in a positive way, eventually we just stop inviting them. That's what happens. They go away. I think that's an important part of any community, is if you have, there's a difference between I need some help right now and constant drama, or somebody who gossips about people in a negative way, all of those things. Like the gossip I get from the community is that, you know, Fred, well, Nicole, Fred lost his job and he's come on hard times, and I think it might be good to do a little community kickstart for him, and then we pool what we can, resources or whatever, or help, to help Fred. That's the kind of gossip I'm okay with. Hearing about Fred's alleged affair with Ginger, not interested in that. We try to keep the drama out of these things, so that's really important. And then the fourth thing is to have fun. You gotta have fun for this to work, right? Speaking of having fun, hey guys, let's go home. Let's go home. That's the command for the dogs to turn around. If we keep going down this road that I'm walking on, we end up in other dogs, and then you guys are gonna hear all sorts of barking and me yelling, and I know you probably wanna hear that one day, but not today. So that's really what it's taken to get the GSD crew. There has to be, I think, a core of 3 to 4 people who are willing to show up. And if they can't show up, they show up in a different way. Like I send coffee when I can't show up, right? And if you have that, the rest will follow. Make sure there's good food, make sure there's fun, and be purposeful about developing the relationships in your community. And I think that will it gets the same thing going. And you don't have to do something every month. That's the other thing. We started monthly. I think we do 4 things a year pretty much. Sometimes more. Like Melissa was going to do her GSD in October. Well, she just did it last week, but she might do another one in October. That's fine. You know, whatever works. Whatever. I mean, I think originally she wanted to build out this house rather than gut it and put it back on its foundation. But she's looking to turn that into a store to sell her spice mixes, which are fantastic. So that's the Tennessee GSD group, and there's a good one in Ohio I've heard about that had a similar thing where they started and developed the relationships and got going. If you're looking to start one in your area, find your core people, have your first meetup. Let me know you're having your meetup, and I'll talk about it on my podcast if you give me enough heads up. You know, send it an email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. I hope you enjoyed this edition of my Thought of the Walk. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that bell button to get notified when we go on again, and share it with your friends. We may, you know, you never know who you'll find when you share a good one with your friends that you think they'll relate to. Make it a great week.